Hey guys, and welcome back to the Podcaster's Journey. This week we are talking about an effect or a rule that is changing your life, whether you are cognizant and thinking about it or not. And so I just want to bring that to the forefront and start a conversation that helps you think about these things, this rule specifically, so that you can make a big change in your life. So let's dive into it. So I'm sure that you have heard of someone or encountered someone, maybe not personally, but through social media, through various forms of media, who seem to have come out of nowhere. Poof, they show up and they're everywhere. It seems like they became famous overnight. And there's this stigma around, maybe not stigma, that might not be the right word. There's this idea, if you're someone like me, that's really, it's really exciting, or it's really intriguing, this idea of overnight success. And I believe that it's intriguing for somebody like myself because it gives me hope that I don't have to put in the hard work. I don't have to pay my dues. I just have to meet the right people. I just have to get lucky, so to speak, and everything will fall into place. And after living for a few decades now, 3 decades, a little more than that, and just going through life, I realized that that's not necessarily true. There is some things to be said for luck and that sort of things and being at the right place at the right time. But by and large, what I've heard from a lot of other people and mentors I've had through the years is that you want to create luck by creating opportunities and being ready for those. They don't necessarily fall into your lap. It comes from being prepared for when something comes across your path to be able to actually take action on it. And how do we do that? What is that? And I would like to present it as an idea called the compound effect. And this idea comes a lot for me and is inspired by Darren Hardy's book called The Compound Effect. Fantastic book. I would highly recommend reading it if you have not. And so this idea of the compound effect, if we are going back to this, to being ready for opportunity when it comes across our doorstep. So if we're constantly putting ourselves in a place and constantly practicing and podcasting, or for me, practicing my instrument, practicing songwriting, if I'm constantly doing that, I'm getting just a little bit better, putting another notch in that belt, taking another step in my journey every single day when I put a little deposit in for that specific thing. And I'm setting myself up for success. And that is going to compound over time to be just a game changer for me. On the flip side of that, if I'm not setting myself up for success every single day, if I'm not practicing these things, when an opportunity does come my way to maybe write a song for somebody or maybe to do an interview in a podcast, you name it, whatever I'm trying to aim for, if I'm not actively putting a deposit in that every day, I'm going to get the opportunity, and more likely than not, I'm going to blow it. So I can either have this compound effect and this rule working for me and building things up and compounding like interest in my bank account, or I can have it working against me. My business coach, Matt, he talks about he has the Fit 5 system, which I think is fantastic. If I remember, it's 5 things. It's spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, and I think professional. So those are the 5 deposits that he tries to put into his life every single day. And it doesn't matter if he got a lot done or a little done that day. As long as he got those 5 things in, the day was a success. And I think that's an incredible way to live. It, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs in our pursuits, or maybe you as a podcaster. You know, if you're able to have a list of things that you know are going to move the needle for you, and if you got nothing else done that day, but you got these deposits put in, you've moved the needle that day, and that's all that counts. You're on the journey, and that compounding effect is going to take root and move you forward, move you towards what you want to be doing. So if this effect is working either for us or against us, why wouldn't we choose to make it work for us? You know? That's the question that I want to pose to us today, and that's where I want us to get by the end of it with the call to action, is just I want to build a case for us to be thinking about this and for us to be just more thoughtful about this and to really put it at the forefront of our mind. When I was, I just want to share a couple stories here to kind of drive the case and build the case for this compound effect. When I was in Nashville, and I would meet many people who were maybe very, very talented, much more maybe talented than even people who are famous, and who are very quote unquote successful financially and with presence or popularity. But they weren't, these people who are super talented maybe weren't as prominent or weren't as financially successful. And I would, after living a little bit longer and understanding how things work, I would say that these folks who are very talented, who know how to make incredible music, but who aren't putting in the constant bit of meeting people, the constant bit of going out and playing in places so that they're available and people know who they are. There's specific things that these people who are more talented than other people who are more successful than them, that they aren't doing. And now as looking back, it was kind of baffling to me at the time as I was going through the experience. How could these people who are more talented than many other people that I even see who are more famous, how could these people who are more talented not be famous themselves? How could they not be where these other people are at? And what it comes down to now, looking back, is that these people probably aren't putting in the daily deposits. They could be, there was one of two things. They could be in the midst of the journey of putting in the deposits, or option two, they could not be putting in the deposits and things are working against them. Even though they're more talented than everybody, if they're not putting in the work to actually move the needle ahead and kind of expose their talent to the world, nobody's going to discover it. So it takes time and it takes consistency, and it's either going to work for you or it's going to work against you. I want to share another small story to build this case, and that is from my undergraduate degree. When I got to Southern Adventist University, where I studied my undergraduate degree in music, in piano performance, I felt really, probably a lot of imposter syndrome, I guess would be a good way to put it. I had come from a small town and had always been the most, maybe the most advanced pianist in my small town, in my circle. And so, but saying that, I didn't have to put in a lot of practice or a lot of work in that community because my talent was able to carry me far enough. But since I was just relying on my talent, I didn't really understand how to read music well. I played a lot more by ear, started with the Suzuki method. I also didn't know how to count or how to play with others. So sure, I could sound good by myself and I could play some technically challenging pieces that were definitely above my ability to read. But at the end of the day, that's all it was. And so when I got here to university, when I got to university and started studying and trying to push past all this, I nearly quit because my colleagues were just so far ahead of me. And I was like, man, I can't even, the pieces that my talent was able to carry me through and be able to play, that's not going to cut it. I'm not even to where my colleagues are at, but just with my talent. And I got to a spot where I really wanted to just drop that program and move on to something else. Because I do tend to be someone who's drawn to shiny objects and new ideas and try to rely on talent rather than hard work. And that's something that I have to regularly work against. But in this instance with my degree program, I decided, as I was getting to the brink of trying to make a decision, am I going to continue on or not? I was like, you know what? I am going to push through this. I'm going to give myself 1 year. I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone. And if after that 1 year, I'm not catching up with my colleagues or I'm not making some sort of progress that I feel like is substantial in just where I was, measuring the gain, not necessarily measuring where I want to be with my music, but measuring how much I've improved versus where I was when I started. If I'm not making a big improvement in that area, then I can step out and say I gave it a good shot and quit and move on to something else. So I gave it that year and it was incredible. I just saw the power of what consistency and this compound effect could do for me. And I got just enough taste in that 1 year that I was like, you know what? I think that this is going to take me somewhere. I think I can actually maybe not catch up with my colleagues, but I can definitely, I can hold my own here in this program. And I think it's worth my time to continue on. And so that's what I did. And so for those 3.5 or 4 years in the music program there, I steadily put in, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day in my practicing. And it was consistent and able, that's a big chunk of time. So I'm not saying you and your podcasting or what you're pursuing right now. We're talking about podcasting and the podcaster's journey. So you and your podcast, I'm not saying you need to practice your podcast for 2 to 4 hours every day. That's not realistic for most folks. But what I am saying is, like, in my degree program, I was taking, I met with my professor 2 hours a week. And so I should be practicing anywhere from, 2 to 4 hours a day. And so what I'm trying to say is my schedule was set up in a way that I was, it was important for me to practice that much, and it was necessary for me to practice that much. And that's not, as I've learned more about being sustainable and everything, that's not a great place to jump into the deep end of the pool. And I think it was kind of a gradual growth. I definitely, when I started the music program, I could barely, stay focused for 30 minutes of practice. But by the end, 4 hours felt great every day. By the time I got to my senior year. And so just thinking about the progress that I saw and how that compounded on itself, and just the growth that I had through that phase and that season. And then unfortunately, when I graduated, I didn't have a strong plan of how I was going to use it. And I wasn't consistent anymore. And I didn't let that, and I let the compound effect, instead of continuing to build and give me benefit, started to tear everything down that I had just worked at. And so it's a personal story of the benefits and the terror is a dramatic word, but the devastation that this effect can bring as well. And so I just want us to stop and think, the choices that I'm making, the direction that I'm heading, the decisions that I make every single day, what are they building towards? Are they building towards getting me where I'd like to be in 5 years? Or are they getting me to staying in the same spot? Or am I going downhill in the next 5 years? Think about that. That is the thing we want to think about today. As I was preparing for this, I was researching. I just wanted to do a quick research on some lighting things in here and try to just make myself 1% better today for this podcast episode. And so I went and looked at one of my one creator that I follow called Shen, his podcast or his studio YouTube channel, and how he just helps people make their studio look better. And I discovered his channel, I guess it was 4 years ago. And so it was just really cool to see his progression of where he was when he barely had quit his job 6 months previously to where he is at now with this thriving business and able to help other people build their own studios. And the videos he was making 4 years ago, kind of like this, just kind of going through sharing how to make their video look better. I'm trying to help people make their podcast sound better, and where he's at in 4 years and the journey that he's been able to go on. It's just really, really cool to see how the compound effect played out for him and where it's taken Kevin. So anyway, I want to share one last story from Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect. And he, in the book, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. He tells a story at the beginning of the book of 3 men who are just kind of average Joes who make just an average salary every year. And they're all kind of buddies, and they all live a similar lifestyle. But the first person, he decides that he's going to cut out 125 calories every single day, and that he's going to listen to, I think it was 20 minutes of educational material for his business or his job every single day. And how the second guy decided to do nothing, change nothing in his life. He was just going to continue living in the same lane. And the third guy, the third friend, decided that he was going to just add about 125 calories a day, just like an extra cookie or, something very small, very minuscule, not a big thing at all. And so Darren talks and explains the story, and over the course of the next 6 months, you don't see any difference in these three guys. They're all kind of looking exactly the same. By the time they get around 12 months, 13, 14 months, still not a big change. There might be a slight change. The first individual is starting to pull ahead a little bit. He's looking a little bit leaner and trimmer. And the other guy who is adding a little extra calories every day, he's getting a little bit, just a little extra on weight. But again, not a big difference. But by the time you get to like 2.5, 3 years, you're seeing a major difference. Darren calculates out the numbers, and the first individual who cut out only 125 calories, Darren does all the math, and he says that he would have lost about 33 pounds in the course of that 2.5 years. And the third individual who is adding just a little bit, he's gained 33 pounds. So from the first individual to the third individual, they're now like 60 pounds apart. So they look drastically different. The guy in the middle, he's still just moving right down that middle of the road lane. And he's just a little bit more bitter about life. The first guy, he's done all that learning. He's now put in like 1,000 hours of learning over the last couple years that have added up just over 20 or 30 minutes a day. He's gotten a raise at his job. He understands interpersonal relationships better, so his relationship with his wife is better. This guy who's gained quite a bit of weight and who's just decided to eat just a little bit more, he's not been putting any effort into his professional life at all, but he's feeling sluggish and slow because of the weight he's put on, and he's just not having a good relationship with his wife anymore because he's struggling at work, and so he's stressed, and so now he doesn't enjoy his time at home with his family. It's just really eye-opening to me, like maybe the ripple effect or the butterfly effect, that this one decision, maybe two small decisions, to eat a little bit healthier and to cut back a little bit and to add a little bit, just a small bit of learning to one's life, made these big differences. Now, this is just a hypothetical situation. I don't know. I don't remember if I don't think it's a true story. I think it was made up purely for the purpose of talking about the effect, the compound effect, and the ripple effect it has on our lives. But our lives really just diverge over time, and they compound based on the nature of our habits and based on the nature of our choices. It's so, so important that we think about the decisions we're making, where we want to get to, and how we're going to get there. I want to leave this quote with you guys from the book, and it says, "Choices are the root of every one of your results. Each choice starts a behavior that over time becomes a habit." So if you're not happy with where you're at, it's because of the choices that you're making. And if you want to have different results, you've got to make different choices. Yes, there's going to be different things in life, that can make things more challenging. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us getting up at the beginning of the day and deciding what we're going to do with that day and deciding how we're going to spend our time. We've all got only 24 hours, and our decisions are either going to compound us in a direction that we want to go or take us away from where we're trying to get to because we're not choosing to go where we want to go. It's really like, planting seeds and just watering that every single day, taking care of that garden and allowing it time and space to grow up. If you've done any gardening, you know that it takes time for the seed. You can put it in the ground, and it might be, depending on what kind of seed it is, it could be quite a while before you see any growth out of that. I've heard of trees, I don't know off the top of my head which ones they are, but I've heard of trees that you plant the seed, and it might be, I want to say 6 to 12 months before it might even sprout, but you're just having to water it every single day, knowing that it's going to happen, that it's going to sprout eventually if you take care of it and you continually make the decision and compound by watering it every day. If you don't water it, it's not going to come up. Even once a plant or a garden does come up, you've still got to take the time and the energy to continue to water it. Even once you start to see some growth, you can't back off then. You've got to continue. So it's just like that, guys. I just want to encourage you guys, as I have been this whole episode, to think through your life, think and reflect on your choices and your steps. What is one small habit that you can commit to today? Like I was sharing with my music degree program, jumping to 4 hours of practice a day is not going to be sustainable. For you to spend 4 hours a day on your podcast is not sustainable. Maybe it is sustainable, though, for you to choose to write on your podcast script 10 minutes every single day, so that you're actively working towards that and actively working on your podcast. Maybe it's reasonable for you to say, I am going to research my topic for my podcast for 15 minutes, 5 days a week. It comes down to you guys deciding, for you to decide that you're going to make the choice to set whatever goal you're going to do and follow through on it. I see it every week as a piano teacher and working with my piano students. I see it every week. The students that grow are the ones who actively every single day put in some time. It doesn't matter if it's 5 or 10 minutes, but they put in time and they sit down and they practice and they make some progress. The students who aren't making any progress are the students who don't care to sit down, or their practice is erratic. Maybe they get, maybe it's 3 hours one day, but it doesn't matter because they didn't get any other practice the rest of the week. So I guess that's what I want to leave you guys with is set that goal and hit it consistently. It's not something that you can make up for once the time has passed. It's like working out at the gym. If you're working to build bigger biceps or to maybe run a faster mile, you don't miss like a whole week of training and decide next Monday, you're like, okay, to make up for that, I'm going to do like 3 days of training in one day. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same way in whatever you're trying to achieve. With your podcast, it's the same way. You don't get better, you don't get further unless you hit record. You don't get better and you don't get further unless you're networking with other people to have on for your guests. If you're not sending 5 messages a day, 10 messages a day to meet people. It just comes down to you making the decision to make things happen. So this is something that I'm growing in and that I'm learning how to do, but I just want to encourage you to do the same. If you're needing help or want to discuss something that you're committed to doing, come find me in my Facebook group. I'd love to encourage you there. Love to, just cheer you on in the journey that you're on and hold you accountable to that. Because at the end of the day, it's just all about us making the decision to set our goal, celebrate the win no matter how small or how minor, and to consistently show up and to do that. Consistency is such an overlooked superpower. Use it, wield it, and grow. Thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you back here next week. Until then, happy podcasting.